Good morning, Scott McRoberts with Virginia Council of CEOs here, and going to chat this morning with Matt Bitsko. Matt is someone I met 6 months or so ago, has recently joined the Virginia Council of CEOs as he's growing his business. Matt's a PhD psychologist who's built a pretty unique clinic here in Richmond called Summit Emotional Health, the only mental health clinic in Richmond that provides sort of a comprehensive set of clinicians from talk therapy to psychiatry to educational assessment and on down the line. So the family and children can get what they need all in one spot in one practice. So I think pretty powerful idea and a great service to our community. So Matt, when you and I chatted a couple of weeks ago as you were joining the Virginia Council of CEOs, I shared with you what I'm hearing from lots of our members, CEOs and leaders, are experiencing a tremendous amount of stress and anxiety in their lives, of course, like everyone else.
Sure.
But it's magnified at that level. When you're the leader and people are depending on you, it's terrifically challenging. So I was excited to invite you and to have you agree to talk with me about that. You have some unique experience that's really applicable to this topic. Can you share some of that?
Yeah, thanks, Scott, and thanks so much for having me. It's really nice to be here, and this is quite the way to start my time in the council. I'm really excited for the personal and all the professional growth. So, really can't thank you enough. I think as we talked, one of the reasons why I was hoping that I could help out some of the folks that are the fellow CEOs and the local business owners. I've had some experience in the past working anywhere from with very athletes that are trying to really kind of perform at a high level. I've worked with at-risk adolescents and their families. I've worked with a lot of adults in the business realm. And it's just one of those things where there's a lot of commonalities to that between the systems at play and the role that the business leaders have to do versus the parents within a family, certainly during a time of crisis. I worked for over 10 years in the Children's Hospital of Richmond, primarily in the childhood cancer clinic. So that's certainly, that's a place where kind of life kind of stops right in the middle of the action, and we need to kind of slow down and really assess and figure out how we're going to attack this. So in a lot of ways, I see my experience there as a pretty strong metaphor.
That's terrific. So back to CEOs, probably the most stressful time, the most unprecedented kind of time that they've experienced in their business career, maybe their life.
Yeah.
Golly, I mean, you're probably seeing it in your practice too, but talk about for us, what happens when people experience that kind of extreme stress and anxiety, and then, how do you deal with that, as particularly as a leader and as usually a high performer and someone who's not used to being in a position of weakness in any way?
Well, especially being in a place of vulnerability and what we've all learned over the last 6 or 8 weeks in different ways. And that's part of the human experience. We've realized as leaders, but especially as leaders in our family, but how serious this is. Is this a threat? Is it coming locally? How much so? And then we've really had different understandings kind of day to day, week to week, that we've had to try to navigate and try to be a little bit nimble and flexible, hopefully.
Right.
That's part of the process that we all know, and part of our pause that we kind of respectfully said, geez, here we are at the very end of April, and who would have thunk we'd be here just less than 2 short months ago. So, the one thing I can tell you is it's tough as leaders, and especially as we're used to being very planful and prepared. And we really try to consider all options that are out in front of us. And hopefully many of us have done that. Sometimes we just need to pause and kind of look around and say, look, I am not prepared for this. No one could have been prepared for this rainy day. It was an impossibility. Mm-hmm. In fact, it sounds a little bit disrespectful just to call it a rainy day. It's a very difficult time for our businesses, for our families, and for our whole neighborhood, right? We're all trying to figure out how everyone's going to survive, let alone thrive. So that's a piece that I think is really, really important to this is, how do we find a time to really kind of step back and say, what do I do now that I'm here? I prepared as much as I can, but now I need to really kind of figure out in my own head and with my trusted colleagues how we're going to proceed.
Yeah, so our folks, CEOs and small business owners, are having to make really meaningful decisions day by day, week by week in this crisis time. Any thoughts around decision making during this time?
Sure. And you really don't have to be a psychologist, and the CEOs that are listening to this, you're going to know that fear and anxiety is not the place where we want to be. It's not the mindset or the physical space that we really want to be in when it's time to make these choices, these very critical choices that we have to do on a day-to-day place. So, one of the pieces I could say, which is probably easily understood, but it's harder to do. I think we need to come a balancing. You have to find the ability to find some calm, whether that's in your own head and your own body, and find that space. It's really important for us to kind of, maybe even more than we would ever do it, find a place to really just kind of settle your mind, settle your thoughts. And then, there's the old Navy SEALs analogy that when you're in the fight, and whether you've been able to plan for it or something's really been handed to you, you just got to over communicate. And you want to find out who are the people that you have in your headset, whether they are your trusted staff and colleagues within the business. And sometimes you need to make sure, is it only 1, 2, or 3 folks? You don't put it out to the 10 or 15 because that's a lot of noise. But really trying to figure out how do you get your head around this in a calm place, but being able to really kind of engage with the folks who you trust the most.
Okay. So I've seen CEOs who've come across as fairly anxious during this time, even publicly. And I've seen CEOs who've come across as very confident in this time. Is there a right way to be, or?
Well, yeah, I think part of the answer, and this is where I'm going to sound like the psychologist, is it all depends, right? And it all depends on what your company, what your culture is, what it has been, what your approach has been. So I think you want to be fairly aligned with that. You want to try to stay as consistent as you've been in the past. That being said, I think it's very powerful just to be honest with your group and with your crew to kind of put yourself in their same position. Hey, look, guys, these are unprecedented times. Am I nervous? Yeah. Am I worried and scared? Sometimes, yes. So to kind of join the fight and to honestly put yourself right there with them, I think, of course, has a lot of value, especially if there's any alignment with how you might have done that in the past. And then be the leader, be the steadier voice, and try to orchestrate how we can move forward. There's a lot of learning and there's a lot of modeling that can really be done there.
Yeah. And so I shared with a confidant of mine that I think I'm a better leader in times of crisis than I am in normal times, that I might get a little lazy in normal times. Is there some relationship between stress and performance?
Well, yeah, we all have our own unique curve, if you will. And if you would Google it, there's a bell curve out there about kind of performance and stress. And we all have our sweet spots as far as what's the right level of intensity, what's the right level of stress, and our performance and our engagement and our focus really just kind of keeps increasing. But one of the things that I talk to my clients a lot about and that I try to keep an idea about myself and my own family is, well, how long, how strong can I hold up with that? If the intensity keeps going on for too long, we all need to find some moments where we can really kind of have those pauses and kind of figure it out. Because if not, what we all have to worry about is, we can be going and we can be really focused and dialed in, but there's going to be a point where we might kind of fall off the cliff there. So yeah. I would agree with you. There's a lot of value in being a great leader and being able to kind of have all those skills in these times of crisis, but we still have to make sure that we have the long term in view.
Yeah, absolutely. So a big part of the conversation I've been having with CEOs around this stress and anxiety is the stress and anxiety that comes from other people, mainly their employees and their teams, their families, of course, but in the CEO context, boy, they're having to deal with other people's anxiety a ton.
Yeah.
Any thoughts around that?
Well, the first response, I would bring it back to the analogy of you have to sit with yourself and you got to realize how you're experiencing this. And then you focus on your own family and what their needs are and how you can try to help those as best we can. And Lord knows we all do good jobs and then less than good jobs at times. But if you have that's a good set of data, and that's a good roadmap for how you can extend that out and really kind of help with your own colleagues and within your own business. And then the second thing I would say about that is, the best thing to do is to try to figure out how you can message to them, how you can let them know what's really important, and kind of really be there with clarity, because you don't want to say, look, guys, I will do anything it takes. I'm just always going to be here. We're always going to be there. You don't want to overextend yourself. You want to be very clear, but you have to put your own boundaries to it. And that's a way that you're going to be able to maintain your own sanity, if you will, during this process. You're going to try to let them know how you're going to help, how you're going to try to help over time, but it can be as clear as possible. And you have to have some of those nice boundaries.
Okay. So what are some practical things for the individual CEOs who are going to watch this video that they can do to help lower that stress level, help them be a little more clear-headed day to day?
Every person's going to come to this with their own different skill set and their own experience. There's a lot of folks who are going to say, look, I'm pretty good about this. I've already got my own really self-care. I always exercise a lot. I meditate. I've learned how to do that. So a lot of things that person does pretty well and their own skill set and their strengths. That's the first thing I would say is, try to know what you already have in place and what your strengths are. And even though you might have them in the back pocket, it's the time to kind of take them out and to kind of brush them off.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say, I have folks come in all the time, whether it's a business leader or parents, or if I have an adult who really wants to just do better and really kind of do things a little bit differently in their life and in their work. The one thing I would say is, and they always say, Matt, I just need more coping skills. And I would joke, and as a mental health professional, I say, you know what? Let's try to define what coping skills are, because even though I went to school for a long time, I don't even know what that is, right? So my best analogy that I've been able to figure out, Scott, is it's kind of like if we have to climb a mountain, and even in this situation, a lot of times we choose to climb that mountain and we're excited and we try to put together what we need to climb that mountain. And that's my best example as far as what our coping skills are. I'm going to need the right equipment, the right knowledge, the right expertise. Maybe I need someone there with me. What's my pace of the climb? How am I going to do that? All that. However, there's also times like we're experiencing where we're told, whether we like it or not, we have to climb that mountain. So even though it wasn't one of our choosing, when we're talking about, first off, with our coping skills, it really is about what do I need? And sometimes we need to bring it right to the present moment. What do I need today? And very concrete stuff. What kind of coping skills, what kind of food, sleep, rest, exercise am I really going to need? But I would say, number one, to kind of globally think about what they need on this journey. And that's the best example I have as far as when folks say, I really need these kind of coping skills.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been really helpful, Matt, and I appreciate it. I view what you do as sort of a coach, people there's probably a cultural bias against shrinks. But if you view people like you as a coach, and you just sort of demonstrated that for us as a sort of a coach who can help you be your best self and find ways to overcome, that's terrific. So certainly turning to a mental health professional is another way to cope with these stressful times. Well, Matt, welcome to the Virginia Council of CEOs. I look forward to getting you into a roundtable really soon. I appreciate your time today. And any final words for our folks before we part here?
No, I just would thank you for having me here. I'm really excited. I think it's a very clear metaphor that one of the things I'm trying to do, even though you and I spoke 6 months ago and we planned for me to join in March or April, there's a very real reason why I needed to do this. And I needed to make sure that I didn't get distracted and that I put myself in this experience to really kind of learn So I thank you for that. I'm just really excited about being a part of this and trying to help some other folks out as we go along.
Outstanding. Well, thanks again, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks so much, Scott.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.